Hello, 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 everyone. Welcome to another live session at the Reactors. My name is Rav, and I'm the program manager at Reactor London. Before we get into the session, please take a moment to read our code of conduct. We're all here to learn, so please be respectful and mindful of other people's opinions, and please be friendly. Today, we're kicking off the Power Platform series in association with the Power Platform School. If you don't know what Power Platform School is, Power Platform School works with adults from the BAME community, providing training on the Microsoft Power Platform, as well as mentorship from industry professionals. To the community, basically. And we are so excited to be partnering up with them on this particular series, which is a developer's guide to Power Platform. And our first episode is on importance of data in the Power Platform by Chris. And this will be led by Chris. And without further ado, I'm just going to add on Chris, who will lead the session. Hi, Chris.
Hey, Raf, what's up? Thanks so much. Yeah, you good?
Yeah, good. So I'm going to hand it over to you. If you need me, just shout my name. I'll be in the background listening to your absolutely amazing session.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Cool. All right. So, hey, everyone. My name is, apparently now it's Christopher. That's like the first name thing. So normally when somebody calls me Christopher, I'm in trouble. So yeah, can we stick with Chris? Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to present my screen. Now, just as a heads up, I've got a little quiz for you. So you will likely need to jump off Tinder or Candy Crush or whatever it is you're doing and grab your mobile phone. We're going to do a quick little quiz and have a bit of fun. It is a Tuesday at lunchtime, so hopefully you've got a snack in front of you as well. And yeah, let's rock and roll. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and, present, share screen, and let's go there. And hopefully you can all see that. So can I just get a bit of a shout out from Rav? Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can see your screen.
Cool. Okay, awesome. Hey, folks. So my name is Chris Huntingford. I'm otherwise known as That Platform Guy. So all of us nerds in the community have got some weird alias. I happen to be That Platform Guy. I used to be That Tattooed CRM Guy, but yeah, CRM is not really a thing anymore. Anyway, so if you want to catch up, feel free to grab me on Twitter at that platform guy. Wow, platform guy. Or go ahead and scan this QR code or go to aka.mswhackchris. And the reason that I put that in there is not because I want 1 million followers, but actually because if you have any questions about what we're going to talk about now, and if you have anything you want to share or any advice or feedback, I'd love to take it. Excuse me, I have got a little bit of a cold. I'm blaming Trisha for that. Anyway, I'd love to take the feedback, and anything you want to share, please go right ahead. And I often do get questions after the sessions because I'm pretty opinionated. So yeah, we'll get into that. Anyway, what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick quiz. Now, you don't have to scan this yet. I'm going to bring up a thing called Mentimeter. And this is one of my favorite tools in the world. So Mentimeter lets us run quizzes. So let's go there, avoid creating a fractal, and we'll go in here. So if you'd like to participate, I'd really appreciate it. It's a lot of good fun. And what we're going to do is we're going to go and discover some stuff about your knowledge of the Power Platform. So all you do is go ahead and take your mobile phone, blindly scan that QR code, excuse me, and hopefully you'll get into the Mentimeter quiz. There we go. So we got 1. That 2, excellent. That's a really good start. We got 3. Cool. So as we get a couple of folks in here, let's just quickly discuss something. Not everyone has got the same background when looking at the Power Platform or even tech in general, right? So quickly about me, I used to work in courier and logistics. So weirdly enough, I used to be the guy that used to actually work in a warehouse and help pack trucks, right? And this was many moons ago. And then I used to write code as well, and I got more and more into it and ended up doing, all this stuff with Microsoft and in the community. So those of you who are on the call, what I'd like to tell you is that don't think that you may not be technical. Don't worry. That's not a thing, right? So asking somebody if they're technical is not a thing. It's more around what you're interested in and what you like doing. So without any further ado, let's move on with the quiz. So how excited are you to be here today? So go nuts, say whatever you want, try and avoid naughty words because I think this is streamed. And yeah, how excited are you to be here today? Buzz, that's a great one, right? Let's get some more really fun adjectives in there. Cool. I'm gonna try and submit one on my end. Whoops. There we go. Super. That's good. That's good, right? So everyone's pretty stoked. So let's just quickly chat around this. When we start doing these sessions, it's not just about, oh, you have to be here to learn about some tech, blah, blah, blah. Think about it as, an opportunity to learn something a little bit more different, right? So there's a lot of really interesting stuff that we talk about when looking at the Power Platform. And, when working with Trisha in the Power Platform school, we realized that actually, some people make an assumption that tech is just this boring thing. But actually, there's tons of really cool stuff that you can do here. So let's get our mindsets changed. Let's think about the fact that this could be really exciting. The next question is, would you describe yourself as technical in IT terms or not at all? Which is totally cool. So not technical at all. I'm more of a badger whisperer. Somewhere in the middle, I know some stuff. I love code and I'm super technical. I can build motherboards with my mind, which is kind of hilarious. But I always say to people, I'm kind of like somewhere in the middle, right? So the way that I typically view it is that I don't necessarily know everything about tech, nor do I want to. I kind of know a little bit, but also I want to get a bit more involved. I can see we've got some pro coders or people that love to write code. I used to write code, but I'm better now. Ha 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 ha. No, I'm kidding. I actually used to work for a company called Borland, who wrote a tool called Delphi. And one of my first languages I programmed in was BASIC and then a thing called Turbo Pascal. But yeah, I don't do that anymore. I do more low code stuff. So cool. Most of you are in the middle. That's great. Some of you are non-technical. Don't worry. There's lots of room for you to do stuff here. Okay. What do you know about the Power Platform? So nothing at all and completely new. I'm a maker and I like building stuff. So if you still have me on camera, it actually says the word maker behind me. And I got that from the team at Lego. I know some stuff, but I'm super keen to learn more. I know it all. I'm going to come up there and present because I'm an oracle and a legend. So I know there are some partners and pro devs or people that are absolute Power Platform rock stars on this call. Totally cool. I learn every day, and there are things I like to bring kind of into my world every day to understand it. So yeah, totally awesome. Oh, look at that. That's phenomenal. Okay. So we've got lots of people that are keen to learn. Even better, some people that are totally new, even more epic. One of my friends used to be a bus driver in London, and now he's a proper rock star Power Platform maker. So yeah, good for him. Right, let's go to the next one. What tech do you currently use the most, if any at all? So some of you don't use any tech. That's cool. Don't worry. Microsoft Office tools, that's me. I'm a developer and I work with Java and things like C# and .NET. Even better, if you literally don't know what I said there, don't worry. Wow, we should take a screenshot. Literally, we had all evens. All the Power Platform tools are no tools. Totally fine. I'll tell you a funny story. One of my friends, I study astrophysics and geology, and I'm teaching him. He's never really used any tools before from a tech perspective. And actually, I'm showing him, well, from a Power Platform perspective, his name is Louis, and I'm showing him how to kind of build Power Platform solutions. And actually, one of the first things he ever made was a Power Virtual Agent to recognize minerals. I thought it was the coolest thing, right? So he built this on his own, and he actually told me, this has opened the doors for him to start learning more and more. So yeah, really, really cool. You don't have to be somebody that builds with lots of tech. You can be somebody who's just starting out, and that's totally fine. Okay. I promise you, I'll start leaving you alone with the surveys and the next couple of questions. But the next one is, do you know about data and data sources? So it's information and stuff. I put all my data into Excel. I mainly use SharePoint to store data, SQL all the way. I use tools such as Dataverse. I don't know what data is or what data sources are. That's totally fine. Let me tell you, I didn't ever use tools like SharePoint to put data in, and then I got taught by my one friend. I used to use Excel quite a bit. But yeah, at the moment, I'm a huge fan of a tool called Dataverse. And actually, that's the picture of the icon that the little robot on the left is holding, right? And Microsoft had a bit of an interesting time where they went through a couple of names for Dataverse. I'm not going to get to that. But yeah, that's great, right? So a nice big range. Sweet. So congratulations, everyone, on passing your first test of doing my very intense quiz. So you all deserve a high five. And with that, I will get into the presentation. Right. So I'm obsessed with robots. I don't know why. I literally couldn't tell you. I'm sorry, I'm just getting my timer up. I literally couldn't tell you, but I think they're awesome. And every single thing I think about with the Power Platform, I somehow associate a little toy robot to it. So again, don't ask me why. I promise I have no reasoning. But what exactly is the Power Platform? So there's a couple of things that have happened in the last few years, right? First of all, this concept of needing apps to be built in organizations. I've worked all over the world in lots of organizations, and they always say, hey, Chris, can you make me an app? I could probably give it a try, It may not be the prettiest app in the world. I have lots of talent, just very little taste, so I don't make beautiful things. I mean, people like Trisha make beautiful things. I don't, so I could give it a try. But what we know is that people are looking for people like us or whoever to build apps as fast as possible. And the reason is because IT departments just don't have the capacity to do it. Now, here's something very interesting that a very, very cool guy called Satya Nadella said. So he is the CEO of Microsoft. And he said, in the next 5 years, 500 million new logical apps will be created. That is more than in the last 40 years. That is nuts. So if all of us on this call, we said, you know what, like we're not going to do our jobs anymore. We're just going to go ahead and find companies to make apps for, and we'll make them apps for whatever they want. We would never hit that number. Now, here's something interesting. By 2024, so we're not very far off, by 2024, low-code applications will be responsible for more than 65% of the things that are made. Now, you're probably going, man, low-code, what on earth is that? And that is the most deceiving name I've ever heard for anything in my life, and I'll explain why. So low-code came about from a company called Forrester. They do analytics in roughly 2012. So low-code's been around for about, 10, 11 years, circa. And they said, what's happening in the world right now is we are struggling to find people who are developers who can write code. And as I said, I used to be a developer. I used to work for Borland and build courier and freight software. And I don't really code that much anymore. I mean, I don't have to because I've got all these awesome digital bricks that Microsoft give me to code. So they said that there was going to be a revolution. And that revolution is called the low-code revolution. And that means that people that don't know how to code will be given the opportunity to build really cool things to solve business problems. Now, some of you are developers on the call and you're going, but that's not cool. Don't worry, I'm going to sort you out very shortly, right? But just remember, all this is a platform that allows people to make stuff really quickly without having to write custom or millions of lines of code. Now, the reason for that is, there's a lot of things going on. Now, when you see the term LCNC, it means low code, no code, which is, again, the most deceiving term I've ever heard, right? However, the reason these organizations like Microsoft and Salesforce and Oracle and Mendix came up with this concept is because, number one, IT departments were spending tons of money on building stuff. So for me, if I were to build an IT department's a timesheet solution and I wrote that in Delphi, that would probably take me, a couple of months. Whereas now I can build that exact solution in a couple of weeks. So there were time constraints, resource constraints, business expectations were changing all the time. People were unable to track and measure performance in the way that these things were performing. My favorite one is paper processes. This is a real story. I actually walked into a housing association in the UK many years ago. So by the way, the accent is South African. And when I came from South Africa, I walked into this housing association. And what they do is they manage tenants and lease agreements and things with, people and buildings, effectively. They bring people and buildings together, right? And ultimately, I walked into the contact center and I saw they had all these little colored stickers on each other's screens, like Post-it notes. And I said to them, why do you have those? And they said, well, because nobody responds to emails. So this is the most effective way of communicating. They would write something on a Post-it note, which is completely not trackable. It's not traceable. It's not reportable. You can't manage your time against that. And that leads me to another thing called shadow IT, where people build stuff without IT knowing it. So it's kind of like, I do this all the time. I sometimes use tools like Slack instead of Teams, and my IT department doesn't know I use that. Oh, well. And ultimately, what will happen is that in shadow IT, people like you and I on this call will find ways to do things if we aren't given the right tools. Now, the example I'm going to give you here is, I've given you the Slack example, but another one is, say for example, you wanted to track all your data somewhere, and you wanted to capture a bunch of contacts or people's information. Would you put that in Excel? Absolutely, because that's the first thing that comes to mind a lot of the time. But then it often grows into much more of a challenge because IT don't know you have that data and nobody else does either. And that, my friends, is called shadow IT. And what the Power Platform does is it helps IT organizations eliminate that concept of shadow IT, people doing things they shouldn't, by giving them the tools that they need. So a couple of things when I start thinking about this is, number one, we need to go faster. We need to build stuff really quickly. I'm going to take you a bet on this call. I will make you an app in under a minute, right? Totally up for the challenge. Tweet me, so at that platform guy, and say, hey man, you didn't do it in under a minute. Totally fine, right? But I will make you an app in under a minute. In fact, I will make you a dashboard in under a minute as well. And you know what? I'll make you an automation in under a minute. So 3 things, right? There's the challenge. The good thing is we already have a lot of the data that we need. There's data in all of our organizations everywhere, in Excel sheets and SharePoint lists and tools like Dataverse and SQL, and in the cloud and on the premise, and there's lots of things, but there's tons of data everywhere that we can use. So the way that I look at it is, when organizations need to change the way they build stuff, Microsoft call it digital transformation. That word gets flung around a lot, but think about it as things changing from manual to digital, right? So you can buy solutions that will do that for you. So you can go ahead and buy stuff like going to, I don't know, the Marks and Spencers or the Sainsbury's or the Asda's of the world and buying a software as a service solution off the shelf and implementing that. Amazing, you've solved one problem, right? But sometimes you need to do that. Other times you can write custom code. So you may have some people on this call who are super good at .NET and things like Java, and you can get them to build you something from scratch, right? But if you think about it, it often only solves some of the problem. Whereas when you're looking at things like platforms where you have the spreadsheets, manual processes, shadow IT, access databases, loads of those things need to be retransformed and made into something more modern. That's where the Power Platform comes. And that's a lot of the stuff in any business. So you can use the Power Platform to solve a lot of those problems. But something we learned very quickly is that the Power Platform is a bit like digital Lego. Now, if I was on Teams, I'll be asking you to let me know if you all play with Lego, and I bet you do. And if you don't lie, right? No, I'm kidding. So I love Lego, and I always say that for me, I love building things. I love to create. Like often when I'm on calls, I have a little bit of Lego over here, and I'm busy building stuff and playing with it. I don't know why. Probably I'm just a crazy person. And I always think that the Power Platform reminds me of digital Lego. They are pre-built digital bricks that Microsoft have given you to create things, which is really cool. But what happens when you're building your Lego fairy princess spaceship and you realize that you need a special brick? And you know what? You can't make that brick yourself, and you can't phone Lego to make that brick. So what do? You phone your friends that are custom developers and you say, hey, custom developer, you've got a 3D printer. Can you print me this special brick? And you have to buy them lots of pizza and beer, and you worship their feet, which is important because devs are very clever, and they print you the brick. And it's exactly the same thing in the Power Platform. If you can't find a tool to help you solve your problem, you can go and ask somebody who's very technical who can solve it for you by creating something that you can reuse. So I always say to folks, when looking at the Power Platform, you need people who understand the problem and people who understand often the deeper areas of technology to make a really cool solution. And we call that a fusion team, right? Now, one thing I learned when I used to work for Microsoft, also, how do you know when somebody used to work for Microsoft? Because they'll tell you. So anyway, that time I worked for Microsoft back in NAM, I actually like Microsoft's mission a lot. And you're probably thinking, well, what has this got to do with data and Power Platform? And I promise it's got everything to do with it. Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to do more, which is really, really, really important. So you're probably thinking, well, what does that mean? Do more. Well, to achieve more, to build more. And the only really way you can do that is to save them time and give people access to tools to help them save time. And that's where the Power Platform comes in. Now, this is a little bit of a dated slide. I'm going to be sworn at for showing you this one, and not one with one of the extra tools on it, or the extra digital building bricks. But the Power Platform is effectively a set of tools that help you make things really quickly. So on the top layer, you've got a set of tools that help you access information and do certain things. So you've got a tool called Power BI, you've got a tool called Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power Virtual Agents. And no, PowerPoint is not part of the Power Platform. And then you've got data and connectors, AI Builder, and Dataverse. So what does this all mean? What do these things actually do? Well, Power BI is a really cool analytics tool. It lets you understand data from a visual perspective. So I can quite easily, whoopsie. Sorry guys, oops. I can quite easily build out my own solutions using the Power Platform and actually inject in tools like Power BI. So as a quick peek over here, you can see that I've definitely opened the wrong tab. I've got a bunch of information embedded in Teams. This is a Power BI report embedded inside Teams, and it's showing me issue management, right? So these are issues that have cropped up in my organization. Now I can view this data and say, hey, show me all the active issues. Oh, lots of them in Ireland. Show me all of the issues that have been resolved. And this is a really great way of understanding and reviewing data. There we go. So a Power BI report is a great way to show data in a more effective way. You've got a thing called a Power App. A Power App lets us get data. So in order for me to get data from users, I need to give them a way to give me data. And in that way, we use a thing called a Power App. As an example, pretty sure you all know what a wind turbine is. So what we did is we built a little solution that allows people to go and inspect wind turbines. So this is for a makeup company called Aeolian. I can go, let's begin. And this is a little app. You can see that it's really clickable. It's got information about my turbines. I can go and view information about the turbine and see all the inspections that have been made against it. This is a little app. Like I said, I don't make pretty things. I have lots of talent, but very little taste. So if you need somebody to make you gorgeous looking apps, I'm not the one. I make functional stuff, right? So I need to work with somebody who understands graphic design and UX, or user experience. You've got a thing called Power Automate. Now, Power Automate's a bit like the wind. It runs in the background. It solves automation problems. So what it'll do is that if you normally do something manually, you can get Power Automate to do that automagically behind the scenes. And it's very simple to build, right? It's really just about telling the process what to do next. And from a Power Automate perspective, if I start thinking about the types of things I would like to make, we have these things called flows. You have a thing called robotic process automation, and what this does is replicates human behavior. I'm not going to go into huge amounts of detail, but it's really just a set of steps that take place when you do something. So as an example, if I capture a piece of information into a list, send that person an email saying that I've captured that information. So instead of me manually typing out the mail, this happens automatically in the background. We have this tool called Power Virtual Agent, which I'm not going to demo, but it's effectively a bot, right? So Trisha's a big fan of bots. And what this does is, instead of you using an app all the time, sometimes you want to interact with data, you can use a bot. I wish they had called it Power Bots, but that was taken by Michael Bay in the Transformer films. So Power Virtual Agents it is. And what this does is it lets you have a conversation with an automated being behind the scenes about data. So instead of you talking to a human the whole time, you can actually build out a conversation, and actually that conversation can grow using artificial intelligence, which is terrifying, but I'll explain that shortly. You've got these things called data connectors. You can connect apps, automations, bots, and reports to pretty much any data source you'd like. So as an example, if you have your data in Excel, which I'll explain to you shortly, you can build a report on that. But if you have your data in a SharePoint list, you could build an app on top of that. And we don't mind where your data is. My favorite one is the fact that they got Slack in here, which is actually a competitive product. So you can build solutions on top of other people's stuff obviously with the right security roles and privileges. My favorite one out of all is this tool called AI Builder, right? AI Builder is effectively using data to enhance the user's experience with artificial intelligence. Now, I know some of you are probably busting going, hey, Chris, are you telling me that Keanu Reeves is going to come and have to save us from all the robots and, make sure that Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminators don't bust through the clouds and start taking us out, or my toaster's going to turn into a robot? No, folks, you're good. Here's the thing. AI is embedded in everything you do anyway, right? And that's the thing that's pretty important. AI is embedded in everything you do. So if you're playing Candy Crush right now, congratulations, you're using AI. If you're on Tinder right now, congratulations, you're using AI. If you're in your email right now, congratulations, you are using AI. AI is a natural thing that gets embedded into tools to help us build faster. As an example, when building a Microsoft flow, that thing that I showed you, you don't need to actually build it. You can type in what you want and it'll build for you. Oh my gosh, developers are freaking out now going, oh, it's taking my job. Trust me, it's not. Devs are actually very, very important in this whole process. And then finally, this other thing we call Dataverse, which is a cloud-based relational data storage facility. It is not just a database. It is a layer on top of a whole bunch of data storage that allows us to build data structures really quickly. Now, back in the day, I'm going to get nerdy here. So those of you that are not technical, I apologize, right? Many moons ago, when I used to build solutions, I used to build on a tool called Interbase. Some of you will know it and are currently laughing at me. Some of you have no idea about it. Don't worry, it's not something you ever have to learn about. And when building out places to put data, you had to have tables, and in a table you had lots of columns, and then you had rows in each column, and then you could link tables together, and that was called referential integrity. And then you had to create a thing called indexing, in a way you could search for data and manage the way that the more important columns were always kind of surfaced first. In Dataverse, it does that all automatically for you. So you don't need to spend your time redoing and rehashing all of that. It does it all for you, which is very exciting. Which brings me onto my next subject. And I promise it's not just Lego. So we kind of know what the Power Platform is. So just remember, if you think about what the Power Platform is, you've got all these really cool tools. So you've got this top layer over here with reporting, the ability, or analytics, the ability to make apps, the ability to build automations, and then finally bots, power bots, or virtual agents. But none of this stuff is of any relevance if you don't have data. So you have to connect to places to get data. You use AI to enhance your data experience. And if you don't have a place to get data, well, you can use Microsoft Dataverse, which does sound like something out of a Spider-Man movie. But you can use Dataverse to store your data as well. So just remember, the top layer doesn't really work if you don't have the bottom layer. Right. So the whole point of this entire discussion right now is to show you some of the fundamentals about data. You're probably thinking, why on earth are you showing me a giant kind of slide full of Lego? Well, here's the thing, right? Because the Power Platform is effectively a set of digital bricks that snap together really easily, okay? The data part is kind of like the big green Lego board that lives at the very bottom. So if you're thinking about data, see data as the mechanism to hold all of those tools, right? Very much like a ship holds containers. The containers may be your apps and your flows. The ship is the data. The ship is the responsible part that drives that kind of process forward. And don't worry, I actually will do a bunch of practical demos for you talking about how this all fits together. And I am keeping an eye on the time. So yeah. Anywho, so let's talk about data. So this is a report, right? This is a Power BI report. Right? Remember, told you everything in the Power Platform begins with Power except PowerPoint. They should have got a Power Dataverse. Anyway, so Power BI is a great mechanism to kind of visualize and view data. But as you can see, like I told you, I'm kind of obsessed with rocks and stars, and I love Lego. My sad little spaceman over here, look how sad he is. Well, they are. There's no data in this report. It's kind of pointless, right? But if I supercharge this report with data, look at that. Hey, look at how stoked they are. Hey, stoked little space person, right? And I've taken information that would otherwise have been flat and been supercharged it with Power BI. I've made it relevant. I've given a flat report data, and now I can start seeing some really good stuff here. Okay, so that is a report with data. What about an app? What does an app look like without data? Now, there's a backstory to this. And again, I'll chat to you about my friend Louis. So Louis is learning the Power Platform. He comes from Birkbeck University, where I go. And one of the projects, I call it a free build. One of the mini projects I gave him was to build out a UFO spotter solution. Now, I have a UFO data set from ages and ages ago that I used to use as a demo, as a piece of demo functionality. And it's really cool to kind of run that thing through run that data set through. We'll run that data set through into Power BI, but I also made an app to build out as well, so for you to capture UFO sightings. So I'm going to use Louis as my example. He's an avid UFO spotter. He loves a good UFO, and he decides he's going to go and track all his UFO spotting. So what he does is he captures all his information in Excel. But it doesn't really work super well because there's no way you can do it really quickly because, as we all know, UFOs are really fast. So he needs a way to track his UFO sightings really quickly. And you can do that using the UFO Spotter app. Now, again, this is an app just simply built on top of a data source that allows me to track my UFO sightings. And you're probably thinking, Chris, what has this got to do with business? Absolutely nothing. It's just a fun example. Also, I cannot tell you why there's a picture of a badger in here that's labeled as a cigar. Anyway, obviously the AI broke in that scenario and didn't identify it correctly. But an app with data, look at Stoke Little Space Person over there, is better than an app without data. Okay, apps without data, you may as well use a PowerPoint presentation. Apps with data, this is where it starts getting really good because you're making sure that that app is relevant. And I always have this rule, try and get as much data as possible. And this is why. So when starting to think about connecting to data and data services, we've got these connectors, right? And connectors are really, really cool. So I'm going to show you something real quick. If I open up my little demo scenario over here, and I go to this thing called make.powerapps.com. So this is what you call the maker portal. So anytime you want to make stuff, you go to make.powerapps.com. And it just so happens, this is the navigation menu. On the left-hand side, you've got a thing called Dataverse. If I scroll down, you've got a thing called connections. And there are lots of things you can connect to. So look at all the things I connect to. I connect to lots of data sources, right? So I can go new connection, and I can say, hey, I want to connect to something like, I don't know, let's call it Salesforce. So Salesforce are a competitor product to Microsoft. They actually make competitive software, but there is a connector into their data. Okay, cool. Well, that sounds really weird. What happens if I want to connect up to Outlook? I can connect up to Outlook. Outlook actually stores a lot of data. Now, this doesn't mean you're going to get into Karen from accounts' email or Mohammed from customer services email. That is not going to happen. Okay. Even if Mary from the science department builds out a solution, she is not going to get into that information because there's security that wraps these connectors. Okay. So you can connect to pretty much anything you want. And I'm going to show you practically how to do that. And there's loads. Another cool one is I connect up to Microsoft Translator Services. That actually allows me to translate documents and things. So I'm going to use my home tongue, Afrikaans. Like I said, South African. Believe it or not, I can't speak it properly. But if I want to convert Afrikaans to Zulu, I can do that using the translator service. Okay. Which means that I don't have to learn another language, which is great because it would be bad for all of you. Anyway, connectors are really cool, right? So you can connect up to anything. But something that we struggle with is, say you don't know where to put your data. Say, look, you don't have one of these tools in your office already. You want to build something from scratch and you want to put your data somewhere and you just don't know where to put it. Now, unfortunately, in the world of IT, we build stuff, we architect things using technology we understand, but often let the costs stand in the way. So what will happen is those of you on the call who are super good at SharePoint may build things on SharePoint all the time because you just don't know. For me, I'm a Dataverse person. I used to build everything I could possibly make on Dataverse, right? Because I love it. I think it's such a good tool, but I never really explored the SharePoint side. And then we've got our super nerds, the ones that are really good at SQL, but think Dataverse isn't a real database, but it's actually built on SQL Elastic pools, which is more hilarious. Anyway, So that's the thing. We always kind of think about the stuff that we already know, but don't think to explore wider than that. And we always let cost stand in the way of value. So when we start thinking about the types of solutions you're going to be making, think about it like this. So I call it solution categorization, right? So sometimes you're going to be making stuff for just you, so me to use, okay, like Louis' crazy UFO app, or I may make something for my team. So say as an example, Rav, Trisha, and I decide that we want to have a little solution to give each other kudos. We could build that. You might have a simple business case that you want to solve. So what I call micro case management, where somebody reports a compliment. Fine, that's easy enough. You might have a more complex business case that you need to solve, where somebody's saying, hey, I'm reporting complaints, and here's a really detailed process I need to take my user through. You might have a mission critical use case. Here's a good one. Timesheets are mission critical. You probably don't think I'm right, but imagine you can't capture your timesheets. How do you bill? How do you know who's done what, where, and how? And then finally, organization-wide initiatives, things that are wider to the company. And I recently got off a project where I was working with about 75,000 users. And an organization-wide initiative is something that they would use, like a timesheet solution again, or something to capture expenses. You need to be able to log information there. Now, not all solutions are made equal, okay? And I say this all the time. Now, in Power Platform, 80% of the solutions that people build are roughly small to simple business cases, okay? Which is fine. So we often go into places where they have something like, 20 to 30,000 apps. But more often than not, and it's growing even bigger and bigger now, 20% of the solutions are really complicated and not easy to make. And because of that, not all data structures are made equal. Okay, they cannot be. My example to you is if you are building an HR type solution on top of a tool like SharePoint, you are going to struggle. And the reason is because SharePoint has limited capacity. There are certain rules around referential integrity and the way data is treated. Or you may build something that is so basic, like an ideation solution, which I'm going to show you. You might build that in Dataverse. That's kind of like buying a Ferrari and driving it down the road 2 meters every day. Because yeah, Dataverse is cool. It's really good. It'll solve the problem, but it's quite expensive. So you have to start thinking about the types of solutions you're making and what type of data structure to use. And like I said, you're not always going to have the connection. So the way I break it down is like this. So you have SharePoint, which is really good for dev or citizen dev. So those are people that don't necessarily know how to use the technology, but are really keen on building stuff. Very low volume, non-relational data, maybe single types of permissions for security. As you move up, you have a tool called Dataverse for Teams, which I'm not going to get into huge amounts of detail today, but a little bit more citizen dev focused as well, but you can store a bit more data in there. And you've got a bit more control from the team side of things. You've got Azure SQL, which is more focused for IT professionals, people that want to have that layer and level of control and that granularity, right? Very, very important. I'm not going to talk about the on-prem one, but you can connect data to, if you've got a server in your backyard, bricked into a shed, you can actually build a cloud solution and connect out to that server if it's SQL. And then finally, Dataverse, which is kind of like in the middle of citizen dev, so folks that don't know technology as well, and IT professionals, folks that do know it a bit more. Kind of Dataverse brings it a bit more together, but there is a bit of a learning curve. So if you're brand spanking new to learning about data, Dataverse may be a bit of a stretch, but it's definitely worth looking at. And I've got some links in the end of this presentation to share with you. Now, maybe we should focus on this in a bit more of a simple way. This is my favorite way of explaining it, right? I kind of always I explain data to people in the form of housing, right, or living space. The way I see it is that Excel is kind of like buying a very, very basic little backyard shed. Okay, you're only going to put a couple of people in there. You've got limited facilities. You've got running water. You're not going to have like 25 mattresses in there, and you are limited to the amount of space that you have. Right? It's very flat, very basic. As we start moving up, I see SharePoint as kind of like one of those flats that you buy in London. And those are cool, right? I mean, they're really great. You can have like one big old block of flats with lots of people in it, but it's quite, you can link them up so you can have people visiting each other, and you may have more people in one flat. But again, your facilities are limited, right? Then you have Dataverse for teams. The flats just get bigger, right? You can get more people in there. You've got a lot more room. You've got a lot more facilities. When we start looking at Dataverse, well, that's even crazier because now you've got these big old high-rise flats, lots of room, penthouse apartments everywhere, lots of facilities. So, running water is at the premium, really fantastic. About 7 bathrooms in every room, every house, sorry, not every room, that'd get weird. And then finally, SQL. Theater, one of those big old American sort of Empire State building places where if people lived there, it would be interesting. But think of it like those types of buildings, you can just store unlimited people. You can have as unlimited facilities, right? But it's very difficult to maintain. So that's how I always see it, right? And for me, that's what makes sense, right? Is to think of it as the smaller the data structure, the smaller the amount of data you're going to put in, the less facilities you have. We're starting to think about as you're growing your data structure, the more people you can have or more data you can have and the more access to facilities you have. Now, obviously, a garden flat doesn't cost the same as a penthouse apartment. You pay for what you use, right? So if you're going to build everything on top of SQL and Dataverse, you're going to pay for that. It's just how it is, right? You don't go to the shop and buy bread and milk and then say, hey, I want the milk for free. Everyone has to pay for bread and milk. It's the exact same thing here, right? So when thinking about the data structure, you need to think about cost. Excel is part of Office. SharePoint is part of Office. Microsoft Teams is part of Office. So therefore, when you have Microsoft Office, you have access to those data storage facilities. When I start thinking about Dataverse and SQL, well, you don't get those with Microsoft Office, but you can buy them at a premium, right? So you can say, hey, I've got millions of records. If I put that in a SharePoint list, I'm probably going to break something. So let me put this in Dataverse or SQL, but because it's there, I need to pay for it. You're paying for extra facilities. Now, data influences is pretty important, right? You can't just put data all in one place. It's not like all data belongs in one place. You have to start thinking about things like security. Data location has now become one of the biggest ones. So if you have got data in Germany, it is treated differently to data in South Africa, is treated differently to data in the UK, is treated differently to data in the US. In South Africa, we've got a thing called POPI, Protection of Private Information. In Europe, I nearly slipped up there. In Europe, at least, there's this whole thing around GDPR, which obviously the UK respect as well, General Data Protection Regulation. In America, there's PII. So there's a lot of stuff focusing on how data is treated. So you can't just put all your data in one place. You have to start thinking about that. And that's why I always say to folks, fine, using tools like SharePoint is great, or Excel is great, but it doesn't solve your localization problem. You need to start thinking about where to put your data. And there's a balancing act to be done here, my friends. There really is. Sometimes you have to categorize your data and say, hey, the solution that I'm making only uses very simple data, like ideation data. Who cares what it is? Who cares where it is? So there is this whole concept of thinking about where data is stored. So a couple of use cases that I put together, right? And these are actual things that I've done, but things like time and expense. For me, time and expense, I used SQL to store the actual line item data, and then SharePoint to store the pictures of the receipts, because I could lock that down. Document management is fairly easy. But also I had literally millions and millions and millions of rows. Because I mean, for 100,000 people, capturing a timesheet every week, well, there's 100,000 records every week, and that's just the header record. You haven't even spoken about the line items. So for me, SQL is a natural place, and I could actually siphon that out into other data storage. So for the nerds out there, sure, Data Warehouse or Cosmos, whatever you like. Kudos for the team. This is a really interesting one. So in Microsoft, we had this Kudos app, and you could like virtually high five people, which is pretty cool during the whole COVID time thing. And what we did is we had this ability to manage photos and things. Now, this wasn't built on Dataverse for Teams, but I probably would have built it on Dataverse for Teams, because you could have a Teams Kudos app with like 10,000 people in there, or just under, sharing information, which is really good. This one's interesting. It's health and safety and non-conformance. So I dealt with an organization who were capturing SHEQ, safety, health, environment, quality information inside SharePoint. And it became a problem because you need highly relational data structures to do that. So actually Dataverse is the right place to put that, because you can audit data and manage it. But then all the photos that you take, say Bob from the warehouse has left a bucket on the floor and all the water spilt out. And then Trisha walks past and takes a photo of it, cool. You can actually log that as a safety risk, because it is. And organizations get sued because of that. So you actually need to have the data tracked. One of the more serious ones, which I experienced during COVID, I experienced the build at least, was this thing called antisocial behavior, where people are misbehaving themselves and kids are running around spray painting poles and fighting and stuff. And when you report that, you need to be able to be audited on it. Now, sure, you can buy tools that help you audit and manage things in SharePoint, but in Dataverse, it's the best place because I can audit down to the read level. So actually, legally, it was the right place to put it. And it all depends on the use case. So I say to people all the time, don't skimp, right? Don't skimp on data. Don't mess with data. There are fines that go out to organizations if you don't treat data correctly, okay? So managing and storing PII data, if somebody logs a thing called a subject access request, and you aren't able to extract their data and share with them what you have from them, organizations can get into trouble because of that. And actually, there were people that were sued, right? So genuinely, just go and read it up, but it's very interesting. Luckily, Microsoft are very good at that. So a couple of things I wanted to show you real quick. I know we don't have much time because I waffle, but we're starting to think about data, right? You can actually see that in the Power Platform, you get access to multiple layers of data. So as an example, this is a tool called Dataverse. So I've got lots of tables inside of my Dataverse structure. Now, this is, like I said, this is a bit more chunky. I can go ahead and make new tables. So I can say, hey, we're going to make a table. We're going to call it view air force spottings. Actually, let's call it complaints. Everyone loves good old complaints. I can go ahead and make a complaints table, and all the stuff that you get with it is out the box. You can track changes. You can audit things that happen to that data, right? You can track activities against it. If you want to attach documents, you can do that. So all of this stuff is available directly in Dataverse, which is really good. But as a citizen developer, somebody that's maybe not so new to the platform, using a tool like Dataverse may become a little bit daunting, right? But it is very easy for me to make this stuff. And it's very easy for me to reuse the information, the tools that I've made here. Now, what I did in that scenario is I actually created a very, very basic complaints table. Obviously, it's taking long because I'm on a demo. And yeah, it'll allow me to store as much data as I'd like. I always make this thing up when I do demos. It's a bit like taking my kids to school. You know, I don't know if any of you have kids, but when you try and take them to school and you try and kiss them goodbye, they like fight you and run away. That's what this demo is doing. So I'll flick out into another example of a data storage facility. This is SharePoint, right? So SharePoint is a place for me where I can put data in things called lists. As I said, SharePoint is a little bit less robust from a data storage facility. It's still very good at storing basic information. But as you can see, I've got a bunch of ideas stored here, okay? So these are ideas made up. And if I want to, I can use this for reporting or to make an app on top of. So instead of users coming in here to capture information, they could use my app. I did promise you I'd build you an app in a minute, so let's give it a crack. So I'm going to go ahead and create a thing called a Canvas app, ideas, Chris. And a Canvas app is something I can share with the rest of the people in my organization, and they'll be able to go and capture information inside that ideas table. So instead of using Dataverse, which you have to pay for, this is part of Microsoft Office, and most people are licensed for this. It means that I can go ahead and build my solution directly on top of SharePoint. My app will then be shared with the rest of the organization, and I have the ability to go ahead and manage and report on that data. Now, what's cool is actually this is using artificial intelligence to build the solution for me. And what's happening in the background is it's looking at all the fields that I've got inside the list, and it's saying, hey, what are the fields that you need in this app? And eventually, this app will pop up and say, hey, here's 3 screens. You have a browse screen, a view screen, and a capture screen. And these are the screens you have available for your app. And you can go ahead and configure that and change it whatever way you'd like. There we go. So very, very basic view of the app. What I can do is I can go ahead and run this app. I can add a new idea. So call this nap pod in the canteen. So I'm capturing my idea. I'm just going to copy. By the way, I cannot spell. So I'm just going to call this test, whatever. The date is going to be today. So these are things that are available directly to me. The area is going to be, just putting a whole bunch of stuff in here. Oh, cool. Say save. Very, very basic piece of information. I've captured that idea if I go to my idea management list and refresh it, ultimately, hopefully this all works out very well. So let's go newer to older. Need an app pod in the canteen, right? So that's been added to the list directly through my app. Now, instead of the users going in here, I can go ahead and share my app with everyone else. So all I would need to know is go ahead and say, right, what am I doing? I want to go save and kapow. And if I really wanted to, I could go ahead and publish this and then share it with the rest of the organization. So once my app is published, I can share it and people have access to it. Very much like my turbine inspection solution that everyone has access to right now. Now, I did say that I could make an app, but what about a report? I can also build you a report really quickly. So if I go to integrate and I go to Power BI and I select visualize this list, it'll automatically generate a Power BI report, which is really good, right? So what it does is it again looks at all the fields and says, what are the things you need in your reports? And kapow, here's my Power BI reports. So the number of requests by importance is low. I've got a couple of high ones, and as I move through, I can filter them. So it's already made that report for me, which is pretty good. So I've got an app and a report. The last thing I can do is build out a very basic automation. So if I go create a flow is effectively an automation. It's going to send an email every time I capture a new record in that link. So let's authenticate. That's a good demo of Microsoft security, making sure I'm behaving. You can see that these are the connections it'll need. I'm going to have to fix each connection, which is typical. And what this will do is this will actually allow my flow to be created. I'm not going to do it right now because I've broken it. There we go. Great demo, folks. But the flow allows me to reconnect to these data structures. Once I've connected to the data structures, what it then does is it builds out the flow automatically for me, and it'll send that email to anyone that captures that list, that record inside that list. So just think about it like this, right? The Power Platform is integrated into all of the various data sources within, or a lot of them within the Microsoft stack, like Dataverse, SharePoint, or lists. And actually, it will soon become even more accessible through tools like Microsoft Azure, which is very exciting. It is also directly accessible through Microsoft Teams. So if you're using Microsoft Teams, you can actually start building things like apps and flows directly through Teams, which gives you the ability to manage your solutions as well. So it's pretty exciting, right? It's all kind of integrated together. So the last couple of things, right? When you start thinking about the platform, I always say to people, when designing a solution, the bitterness of poor quality remains long after the sweetness of a low price is forgotten. So when we think about the data sources we are using, it's going to come down to how you define and architect that solution. And like I said, absolutely, tools like SharePoint are included in Microsoft Office. If you go to portal.office.com, you will have SharePoint available to you mostly directly through the waffle menu, right? So you can access SharePoint directly from here. You can access Teams. But if you are building something like a mission critical solution, think very carefully about the data structures you are using and why, right? Not all data should be in SharePoint, especially things like PII data or private information, okay? I always say to people, the benchmark for this is, would you trust your salary data inside a SharePoint list? And I'll leave it at that, right? So please remember, when architecting things, think very carefully about why you are doing it and what data source you're using and why. There's some really good links that you can use. So Microsoft Learn has got some kick-ass learning paths to go for. So what I did is I decided that these were probably the best ones. And then I included a recording of a call that I did when I was at Microsoft around a thing called the notorious data debates, which, believe it or not, does go a little bit more technical than this discussion. I tried to keep it as high as I could. But in this, there's actually, there's an overview of why all of the data structures were made available to us. So I definitely recommend going and checking out Microsoft Learn. I use it all the time. I'm actually currently busy with a learning course right now on Sustainability Manager. It's a great place to start picking up all these different pieces of information and snapping them all together from a platform perspective. And yeah, I really hope that you start thinking about using the Power Platform as a tool to help you solve business problems. So a massive thanks to everyone. Thank you to Trisha and Rav for inviting me, and I hope that gave you some insight. But the thing to walk away from this with today is, number one, the Power Platform is a set of digital tools that help you solve problems. Okay, doesn't matter if you're technical. It doesn't matter if you're focused on doing basic stuff. It doesn't matter if you're a bus driver, like my friend Keith. Right? You can build stuff within the Power Platform. Number two, data is the priority when building out solutions. Okay, data is the king and queen of the Power Platform. Data first, and then I start thinking about the rest of it. And then number three, what I would suggest you do is start looking at the learning path, start trying to find places to go to where you can get more information and actually just build something, right? Give it a try. You never know. Like I said, my friend Louis just randomly built a mineral matcher and a Power Virtual Agent, and now he's building crazy stuff like UFO spotting solutions. So just give it a crack. And if you want more information on the learning path I'm sharing with people, like I said, you can have the slides, but also just hit me up on LinkedIn or Twitter, and I will definitely share what I've got with you. So thanks, everyone. I really appreciate the time. And if there's any questions, let's check them out.
Chris, thank you so much. We have one question, which is, I've just put that on the screen. It says, what is the volume threshold for Dataverse?
There's no volume threshold for Dataverse. The volume threshold is the money you have in your pocket. It's $40. It's $40 per gig per month. You can store unlimited amounts of information. However, you have to remember that it is highly relational. So what I typically say is SQL is good. I'm going to give you a random number. SQL is going to cost you like $5 or pounds. Dataverse will cost you 40. But building a Dataverse solution, you can build it in about 1/10 of the time as you can a SQL solution. So it's a great question.
I think the second part of the question was at what volumes would one need to think of for SQL over Dataverse?
That's a great question again. So I don't necessarily think it's volume based. I think it's complexity based, right? I would say that when you're getting into like the upper echelons for me of like the 10 millions, because I know Dataverse structures that have got 100 million records in them easily, right? But I think it's more relational stuff. So the more relational the data is, the more you're going to start needing to think about, well, is Dataverse the right place, or is it like kind of, you know, star schema type stuff where I can plug it into SQL? For me, it's more complexity of data rather than volume. But yeah, Dataverse for me first, and then I think, okay, small amounts of data, SharePoint, much larger, sort of more complex structures, SQL. Ooh, I'm about to be attacked by toddlers.
Sorry. I think that was all the questions, but thank you so much, Chris. To everyone watching, we have another session which will be live at 2 p.m. today, which is data wrangling and manipulation with Python. And then we will be back with the Power Platform series again on the 1st of November, which will talk all about beginner's guide to Power Apps. But this video is recorded and will be available to view on our Reactor YouTube channel, I think instantly. But thank you everyone for joining, and thank you very much, Chris and Power Platform School, for collaborating with us on these absolutely amazing sessions. And to everyone, have a great afternoon or evening or good night, wherever you are based. And thanks very much, Chris. We'll see you some other time.
Yeah, thanks, Rav. I really appreciate being here.
Great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you, folks.